I will now turn it over to our senior adjunct fellow in our Energy Economics and Security program, Yaya Fanusie. So thank you again to Kath Hicks, and Yaya, over to you.
Thank you, Richard. Great to be here, everyone. Welcome. My name is Yaya Fanusie. I'm an adjunct senior fellow here at the Energy Economics and Security program here at CNAS. And I work specifically on the issue of national security, or the national security implications of cryptocurrencies and fintech. So we're going to take you today on a brief but interactive session. We know we're virtual, but we want to make this as interactive as possible. This is going to be a choose your own adventure investigation, placing you in the middle of a scenario where you are going to be, you the audience, you will be a South Korean cryptocurrency exchange, and you're going to deal with some of the associated risks of this interesting new technology. But before we do that and get started, I'd like to turn to my two colleagues, Jason Bartlett and Emily Jin, and they're going to give you a brief introduction of our EES program and then the logistics for this session for the next 30 minutes. Jason, Emily, why don't you all take it away?
Thanks, Yaya. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Bartlett, a research assistant for the Energy Economics and Security program here at CNAS. The EES program explores the changing global marketplace and implications for U.S. national security, foreign policy, and economic statecraft. We cover a wide range of foreign policy and national security topics, including U.S.-China economic competition, U.S. sanction programs and global sanctions evasion schemes, the financing of nuclear weapons, as well as innovations in financial technology and associated risks to U.S. national security. Earlier this spring, we also announced the official launch of two new initiatives, our Sanctioned by the Numbers series and our new Geoeconomic Toolkit. The former offers data-driven comprehensive analysis and visualization of major patterns, changes, and developments in U.S. sanctions policy and economic statecraft, and the latter focuses on export controls, investment reviews, and ICT trade restrictions. Now I'll turn over to my colleague Emily Jin to provide some quick logistics for today's event.
Thank you so much, Jason. I am Emily Jin, also a research assistant for the Energy Economics and Security program here. Before we get started with the event, a few logistical notes for all of you. This event is a live stream, so all of you are muted and we cannot see you. Also, this event will be interactive, so our program's adjunct senior fellow, Yaya Fanusie, will take you on a choose your own adventure style investigation where you will get to make decisions at 4 different junctures. We will be using the live polling option to determine the courses of action by proceeding with the course of action that receive a majority of the audience votes. For each decision point, we will give you about 40 seconds to a minute to let you cast your votes. And if you're having any technical issues, you can reach out to our communications team at comms@cnas.org. And after we go through the 4 junctures and complete the scenario, Yaya will lead a post-scenario discussion. And if timing permits, we welcome questions from all of you. Now I'm handing it back to Yaya.
Thank you, Emily. Well, why don't we get started, and I will set the stage for our scenario, for our Show Me the Crypto. And as Emily mentioned, there will be a live polling element worked into this. And to participate, you'll be able to go to cnas.org/live, but wait for the cues. We're going to first explain the scenario and we'll ask the first question, but that's where you'll go to actually participate and vote and guide our choose your own adventure. So why don't we bring up Show Me the Crypto. This is our scenario. This is you. So you are BitUp. You're part of BitUp, a South Korean crypto exchange that is experiencing rapid growth in your customer base because of the rising interest in cryptocurrency trading. Now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, BitUp has experienced very high usage, and this has raised both your profits, but it also has raised some potential risks for your company. You're the CEO of BitUp, and you and your team are concerned about cybersecurity threats that are targeting your global customer base and your profits. So your company recently received an email informing BitUp of a mandatory update for its cybersecurity software. Now, this is where the story begins. Let's look at the email that you receive. So you've received this email, and it's signed by your current cybersecurity provider informing you of a mandatory download. Now, if you all can look a little bit and maybe take a quick look and read the email that is now in your inbox, especially read that first paragraph. Dear customer, go ahead and read that. I'll let you all read it. And what I want you to do after you read that email is simply decide on whether or not to click on the associated link. Remember, it's signed by the CyberClaw team. The CyberClaw is your cybersecurity provider. Now, go ahead and based on what you want to do, either click on the link or not click on the link by going to our poll. So now it's time to vote. Go to the cnas.org /live poll and go ahead and vote either to click on the link or to not click on the link. And so while you're doing that, we're going to tabulate it. Jason, Emily, this is really interesting because cryptocurrency is now very much in the news. So people should be thinking about some of what we have seen.
I think sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Yaya. I think it's interesting that our exchange's cybersecurity providers signed the email, so this must be legitimate, right?
Well, CyberClaw, as I said, CyberClaw is BitUp's cybersecurity provider, and it says it clearly right there that this is from the CyberClaw team. So we'll give people just a few more seconds, and then I think we're going to tabulate the results. So either yes, click on the link that's in this email, or no. So I'm wondering what our audience is going to point us to. So hopefully we can bring up those results and see what we have. 80% say yes, click on the link. So why don't we go ahead and click on the link? We had 80% say yes, and 20% said no. So let us go ahead and see what happens when we click on the link for, oh, okay. Just want to clarify, is it yes? It's yes. Let's go for yes. Let's click on the link. So after clicking, you received a message saying that the update has been completed. Now, a few days later, you discovered that the update was actually employed to download malware, which gave cyber thieves access to the computers of BitUp. So these are cyber criminals. They've accessed the private keys of the exchange's cryptocurrency wallets and stole $300 million worth of Bitcoin. Now, looking at the blockchain record, which you can see a record of transactions in Bitcoin cryptocurrency, you can see that the wallet address where the stolen crypto was sent. You're looking at it. Now, perhaps you can learn more about this address and get your funds back, but you're going to need help. It's interesting to note that a large number of your customers are U.S. dual citizens, so you know the U.S. government will be interested in this hack. So here is where we have another option. Now we're going to try this again. We're going to make sure that you all can. I think people had trouble with the poll. We understand that. So we're going to see if we can get that fixed for you. But pay attention to this next option. You've clicked on the link. Now your crypto has been hacked, $300 million worth of it. So do you contact the U.S. legal attaché at the embassy in Seoul? Or should you contact the local representative of Chainalyptic? And Chainalyptic is a leading European-based private blockchain analysis company that helps clients research illicit cryptocurrency. So now we're going to vote again. Are we going to, one, as BitUp, should we contact the U.S. Embassy, let them bring out their big legal guns and maybe help you go after the stolen crypto? Or should you contact the local representative of Chainalyptic, a leading blockchain analysis firm? So now you can vote. Go ahead and go into the chat. Maybe that would be more helpful if people didn't understand. So go into the chat where you are, and there is a place where you can cast your vote. And you have these two options: contact the U.S. Legat, or contact the local representative of Chainalyptic. So you have a couple of options here. Cryptocurrency, as I was alluding to earlier, Jason and Emily, has really been in the news. You know, there was this ransomware seizure that the U.S. just got. I think it was about, $2.3 million worth of ransomware. Did you hear about that, Jason?
Yes, I did hear about that. I know it's still kind of developing exactly how they went about seizing the stolen funds. And I think this just kind of sheds light on the relevance of issues like this, as well as, in this case, the importance of cyber hygiene, and that you really have to be very careful about links that you click on, where they come from, even if they look legitimate. It's always good to get a second pair of eyes on. It's always good to try to really think hard about what you're clicking on and really look at what you're actually downloading, because you don't really know, and it's not going to be immediate. As in this case, it took several days for the download of this malware to be even detected.
Yeah.
And that's something that we have been dealing with in the United States for not just the past several years, but for the past several months with ransomware and malware like this.
And yeah, absolutely. So this is not going away. And guess what? The results are now in. It looks like the majority of people are saying contact the LEGAT. Let's go straight to the USG and contact the LEGAT. So we're gonna click on contact the LEGAT and see what's next in our adventure. So you contacted the U.S. Embassy LEGAT team. They reviewed the public blockchain and said that while they know crypto theft is important, they simply don't have the technical knowledge to trace crypto transactions. As a result, they actually refer you to Chainalyptic. So we're going to go to Chainalyptic. Sorry, USG just didn't have the guns, I guess, big enough to track the blockchain. So here's our next situation. So you're talking to Chainalyptic, you've talked with them, and what they did is they looked at the address of the wallet where the hacker sent your stolen funds. Their blockchain analysis shows that the hacker wallet previously had received funds through a chain of transactions that originated in a wallet associated with a WannaCry ransomware wallet. Now, it's likely now that this hack was part of a North Korean cyber operation conducted by the Lazarus Group. Analysis also shows that some of the stolen funds were later sent to a wallet that belongs to a Hong Kong exchange. So now they've identified that this seems to be connected to the Lazarus Group, which means it's connected potentially to North Korea. And some of those funds were sent to another exchange that's located in Hong Kong. So we have to see what we can do as BitUp to get our money back. So what are we going to do? Do we either contact the exchange that's in Hong Kong, tell them about the hack, and try to get that crypto back directly? Or, since we know that North Korea is involved, should we contact the LEGAT and get the FBI involved? Maybe they can really help us out at this stage. So let's vote again. Go into the chat to vote. Two options. Do you want to contact the exchange that's in Hong Kong? Maybe get your funds back because you can go directly to them. Or two, do you want to contact the U.S. Embassy LEGAT team and get the FBI involved? Go ahead and make that choice right there. So, this is interesting as people are voting. This is not an unusual situation. A few years ago, the Lazarus Group did something similar where they actually sent out phishing emails to, I think it was hundreds, if not thousands of people involved in cryptocurrency businesses. And some of those people clicked on the link, and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of crypto basically was stolen just because of this operation. So this is not an unusual unusual scenario, is it? I don't think so. So hopefully we can tabulate these results. Let's see what we're saying, what the audience is saying. Because I think there are a couple of different ways to think about this. I mean, the exchange in Hong Kong, one exchange talking to an exchange might be very, very useful. Let's see what our results are. Or do we want to go back to the U.S. Embassy this time and pull out the big guns, figuratively speaking? Okay, so it looks like the poll results, I'm sorry I can't show them, but trust us, the poll results are saying go to the exchange. So let's click on the exchange and see what's next. All right. So now you've contacted the exchange, I believe. Okay, you've contacted the exchange, the Hong Kong exchange. But guess what? They've voiced that their opposition. They've voiced that they are not going to help a competitor exchange. So they're not going to help their South Korean counterpart, because that's another exchange. They're telling us too bad for you that you were hacked. So what are we going to do? I think BitUp now is going to have to contact LEGAT. So why don't we go ahead and contact LEGAT and see what happens. So we go to the embassy, we talk to LEGAT, we get them involved, and we speak with the FBI. We give the FBI a copy of Chainalyptic's analysis on the stolen funds. So before, the government didn't really know how to trace any of these transactions, but now we give them the Chainalyptic report. So Days later, we find out that the FBI used their subpoena power to ascertain the identity of the Hong Kong exchange user. And it's revealed that the user also had a bank account with the Chinese bank, cashed out their crypto, and later we understand that the user purchased some Chinese digital yuan. What this is China's digital currency. This is something that has been piloting, that the Chinese government has been piloting, a new digital currency that's basically central banked digital money. So the FBI knows the person's identity because they get that through their subpoena power. He's nowhere to be found. So the FBI then goes to the Chinese bank. The Chinese bank does provide some information about the person's banking transactions, except they do not provide, the Chinese bank doesn't give any information in digital yuan. All of the transactions that happened in digital yuan, the Chinese bank says it cannot release to the US because of quote unquote China's monetary sovereignty. So we're stuck here with knowing that there was an individual who used a Chinese bank who basically laundered this stolen crypto money, cashed it out, and now has transferred it into Chinese, the digital yuan money. But at this point, there's no more analysis or tracing that the FBI can do on digital yuan funds. So we can't actually acquire or get more data. There's no more analysis here. So this leads us in a really bad position. Because we're having trouble now going beyond the Chinese bank. So let's do a little bit more. Let's ask another question, because there's no more blockchain analysis we can do, no more financial intelligence. But let's come to a final question. And it looks like before we give you this final question in our scenario, everyone, you may need to refresh your page to see the proper voting mechanism. So, we're rolling, this is live TV, y'all, or a live session. So, please bear with us. So I think if you refresh your page, if you had trouble voting, you'll get the voting to pull up. So with this last question, which is probably the most important, I'll walk you through it and then we'll have our final vote. So here it is. You're disappointed that the US government wasn't able to help you retrieve your stolen funds. In the process, you realize the power of China's new digital currency system, and you perceive there are new constraints in the global reach of US law enforcement. Now, months later, you learn from a UN panel of experts report that North Korea has developed several new ballistic and submarine missiles with signs showing capabilities that they could reach the continental US and possibly carry a nuclear warhead. Analysts estimate that this new capability would have cost hundreds of millions of dollars to develop. So you feel that this has really hit close to home. You're a South Korean exchange. Now there's a nuclear-armed North Korea that can hit and can even hit the United States. So you have one decision to make as you reflect on this. 4 choices, audience. A, should you just close down your business? Because basically, cryptocurrencies have made the world a more dangerous place, and you want nothing more to do with it. Does that reflect what you would think? Or 2, or B, inquire with Chinese fintech experts about adding digital yuan to your exchange. Why? Well, this chain of events, while disheartening, it shows that the digital yuan is going to be a highly sought after financial asset. Hey, if you can't beat them, join them. C, should you push for South Korea and the US to sanction China? Basically, China looked the other way and enabled this new North Korean nuclear proliferation. Maybe that's the direction you think you should take. Or D, keep operating as normal, but hire Chainalysis to figure out ways to track the digital yuan. Maybe once you have hard evidence as to where the money has moved through the digital yuan, then you'll have more info and you could share this with the United Nations and maybe even eventually get your funds back. Those are your 4 choices. This is our final vote. Why don't you go ahead and vote in those 4 choices, and we'll wait for the votes to tabulate, and we'll see exactly what the audience thinks about the rising risks in financial technology, and what does this mean? What does this mean for for U.S. sanctions power, perhaps? What does it mean for nuclear proliferation? What does it mean even for things like theft and ransomware and just other illicit activity? This is just maybe the tip of the iceberg. This is one example of illicit finance that we're tracking, that we're thinking about and analyzing here in the EES program. So I think we've got a few more minutes to have a lively discussion after we get everyone's results. So I'm really interested in what people are going to say. Emily and Jason, what do you all think? Oh, looks like we have an answer. I don't mean to cut you all off, but maybe we'll go into our discussion after that. So the top answer is D. So basically, folks think that they will continue operating as normal, but now there is a new task. And I'm glad this is an interesting question, because it seems like you don't want to necessarily add digital yuan to the exchange. You maybe want to stay away from that. But what this means, this answer to me means that there is now a technical hurdle that there's a technical hurdle that's going to have to be cleared here, which is when China creates a new digital currency that allows users to transact really outside of the global banking system, really moving through different rails. This is not the SWIFT system, right? This is not the traditional conventional banking. A digital yuan is a new instrument, or a new payment instrument. And so this really means that there's now going to be a need to have an approach, maybe a more tactical approach, to identify ways of tracking or ascertaining what's happening in these new payment systems. And I'll add, we're getting some of the numbers here. So it sounds like no one really wanted to add the digital yuan to the exchange, but a close second was actually to push for South Korea and the USG to sanction China, which is a very, very interesting possible choice there. I know there may be constraints to that, so we're going to get to if there are questions, and let us know if there are questions, and we will turn to those questions in the next minute or so. But Jason, what do you think about some of these options? There was a close second to push for the South Korea and the U.S. to sanction China. What do you think about that?
I think that's quite interesting, looking at the audience polls and thinking that would be a strong, viable option, especially as a South Korean cryptocurrency exchange. I personally haven't seen much motivation from the South Korean government to really ever call out its own government, let alone the U.S. government, to sanction China for any cyber-enabled financial crime. So it's interesting that was a decision that the audience chose, because looking at current politics in South Korea, doesn't really seem like South Korea, and traditionally either, would really want to antagonize China, especially in response to its economic coercion that it did in response to the U.S. and South Korea establishing THAAD in the country. So I think it's interesting that there seems to be kind of a dichotomy in that idea of what the South Korean government would actually be willing to do.
Yeah, and it again points to some of the constraints here, and maybe I'd like to frame this as we go into our final few minutes here. Frame this scenario, which of course is made up, but has elements of real things that have happened and things that we anticipate could happen. Right, the things that have happened are one. North Korea hacking exchanges, laundering through many different transactions to get the crypto out, and then also using a Chinese bank in order to launder that crypto or cash out that crypto into Chinese currency. That has actually happened. Now, what was made up? Oh, and if you would like to ask a question, please go to CNAS.org, CNAS.org/live. That's where you can put your question. So we'll look for those questions. Please let us know, folks behind the scenes, when a question pops up. But let me finish by saying, but here's the hurdle. A lot of this fintech is about lowering barriers, right? It's making transactions have less friction. But the key issue is that the other side is that some of this technology raises the hurdle or raises barriers in terms of U.S. Financial insight, financial intelligence, and even the power to get data and get information from a sovereign, from another government that's going to actually have a new digital currency. So the CBDC is something to watch, something we're thinking about. Emily and I, we co-authored a report on China's digital currency back in January, which I'm sure you can find. And Emily, what do you think about this? The implications of China's CBDC in general? What should people, national security watchers, be considering and thinking about?
So I'm very glad our audience didn't just go with option B, which is to incorporate the digital yuan directly into the exchange. And there's serious implication here with incorporating China's digital RMB to the global financial system. And I think it shows our audience seems to be pretty cautious, which is well advised. And for a while, like most governments have assumed that China would seamlessly join and support the existing international system, its architecture and institutions, and all the values and norms that are underpinning those institutions. But Beijing, unfortunately, has shown in the recent years that it does have the intention to seek some revision or transformation of the current international system. And it definitely shows in its fintech developments, specifically its digital currency. So it speaks well to our audience that people are generally a lot more cautious with that option. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah, same here. And I think we have a very knowledgeable audience, including some of the questions that we're getting. We got a question from Peter. I'm glad he asked this. So Peter is saying, could the USG pressure Chinese banks with sanctions to choose between conducting covered transactions in digital yuan or access the dollar system? That this could be a way to force them to reveal transaction histories. And I'll comment here that I would say I think Peter is right. I think that's maybe the next step. If you understand how saying, and this is the big question, people will say, if there's this new Chinese digital currency, does that mean that sanctions are now null and void? Absolutely not. In fact, Peter is hitting the right note here, because if these are the banks that still want access to the dollar system, they're still going to be vulnerable to pressure from OFAC, if you think about it. And so how do I, reconcile that with how we did this scenario? There's the short term and the long term. And I think in the short term, there's not really a sanctions issue, or there's less of an issue, because these same institutions want access to the dollar system, to the dollar, to correspondent banking. But this is something to consider as we look at the developments of CBDC in general. If we can think about the fact that China, other countries are actually thinking about, are trying to coordinate a system that allows for cross-border transactions in CBDCs. This is all in the nascent exploratory stage. None of this is ready to fully deploy, but I think it gives us insight into what would the steps look like. What would we see moving towards a world where there could be an alternative value transfer system outside the U.S. banking system? So short term, I think Peter is correct, but this is just what we're thinking about. And then someone also asked, crypto is seen as a replacement to the US dollar, amongst other things. What is the best example of alternative to dollars? We also have a question. So I mean, I guess we could just maybe the best alternative of an example to dollars. I don't think there's it's situationally dependent. I don't think there's an alternative to the dollar that works. I think that's why the dollar is what it is. But what I would say, this ties into this issue of, so what do we make of all this? The fact that we have this technology simply, in my mind, means that there's more variety. Let's take Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is not an alternative to the US dollar. So how do we frame Bitcoin? Bitcoin is now just another tool in the toolkit for moving money around. It's something that instead of dismissing and saying, oh, the Bitcoin is not going to replace the dollar, we actually have to be clear that now there are more options to add to the mix. The Bitcoin was just, and transferring into into different cryptocurrencies, this sort of thing is just another mix in money laundering. So I'll say that there. And then we have another question from Rachel. Do you think that Chinese authorities would be comfortable with the foreign exchange, including digital yuan? I'm not. Maybe I'm sort of missing that. What you mean there? Comfortable with the foreign exchange, including digital yuan. So maybe I'll get to. I think what she's asking is how is China deploying this for cross-border payments, and we actually haven't seen much of that. This right now is domestically focused, but I should say that it's pretty clear that the idea is to eventually develop a way for the digital yuan to be used internationally, but that's not going to happen just by China doing it. There would have to be other. That's why it's important to watch what is happening internationally with CBDC, central bank digital currency development and piloting, because there are efforts. Even the Bank for International Settlements has a pilot program where multiple central banks are exploring this way of doing central bank cross-border transactions through the CBDC system that would be separate from SWIFT. That is happening, but it's all in the nascent stages. We have had a great adventure, great discussion. We are out of time now, and I want to thank you, Jason, thank you, Emily, and thank the audience for pulling through with us, even with our technical glitches, and coming to the right decision. Actually, no, there was no right decision. This was all just for fun, but we hope you enjoyed it.